All right. Well, Colin, I am super excited to have you on this podcast in this episode. I think it's going to, I know you very well, and I know that you've got a wealth of experience and knowledge to pull from. So everybody listening in, buckle up and get ready. We've got Colin Steen from Legacy Agripartners in the house here today. So Colin, I'm going to open up with the first question. Same thing I do with everybody. Okay. What does it mean for you to be intentional?
Boy, I think I love the question. I love because you and I have had this discussion a lot. And for me right now, my intentionality or being intentional is all around, it's literally all around, trying to clear up ambiguity. How can I help people each and every day remove a little bit of ambiguity, bring some clarity to what they're doing in their lives each and every day, right? And so for me, and I thank you for this because you've helped get me there, is, I always think, whether I'm talking to a customer that's confused about where the markets are going and what to do, what technologies to take advantage of, or whether I'm talking to an employee about their future in the organization, whether I'm talking to my kids at home about, what are they, are we going to make the varsity hockey team or the soccer team and all this stuff, right? Hopefully, my hope is that my being intentional is removing some ambiguity, removing some lack of clarity that they might have in their life. And as a result, give them a chance to succeed, right? And so help them get the answer on their own, but just take away a little bit of the ambiguity at the same time, right? So we can't lead them all the way to the trough sometimes and force them to drink, but, get them partway there and then kind of, especially with our kids, right? You want to be intentional on that, and get them on the right path, but help them find their way as well. But just remove a little bit of that ambiguity along the way in order to help them, get there easier themselves, right? This journey doesn't have to be like arduous. We can make it a little bit easy. If I have the power to help, why wouldn't I?
Yeah. Well, and I think so many of us, whether it's going through the day, just the normal work day, or even sometimes our time with our families, like we get sort of lost in the rush of things, right? Or we get lost in the acquisition of new information. We get lost in our decision-making processes, right? And so do I adopt this new technology? Do we go with a new type of seed? Do we what's the right thing to focus on? And, some of the leaders that I've talked to on this podcast so far have talked about the need to focus on the right things. But what you're talking about, solving for ambiguity here is really like, well, what are the right things? How do I figure out what the right things are?
Exactly. And, I certainly, that's exactly right. What are the right things? And so for me, especially in my work life, I'm a big, strong believer that the farmer is the center of everything we do, right? So at Legacy Agripartners, and this comes from growing up on a grain and cattle farm myself and all those things. And so I find if I'm ever have some lack of clarity myself about what the future looks like, or what should I do, or should I align with this company or this person, or take the advice of somebody else, it's like, are they coming at me from the standpoint of the farmer being a farmer-centric universe, right? And I think a lot of people talk about that, and some are really good at doing it, and some maybe it's just words. And I'm still learning and getting there myself, but I always find if I keep the farmer as my North Star, stay grounded to that helps me when I'm talking to people. That helps sort of, again, be the anchor point to remove some ambiguity, right? And lead us to the right answer. Even though we don't know what it might be, it's like, okay, we've got choice A, we've got choice B for new technology. Okay, which one is going to help the farmer out more? Which one is what they need, right? Choice B might be more profitable for us, but choice A is a better choice for the farmer and their operation. So let's go with choice A.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, I mean, really, you're talking, I love the use of the word North Star, right? Because that really shows us, hey, this is where the compass points. This is where we're going, regardless of all the other factors, right? This is, we're going to focus our intention on doing what's right for the ultimate customer and solving for that. So I love that take, and it's super important. One of the challenges, Colin, that I know comes up with a lot of my customers, and I'm really interested in how you've solved for this or how you've approached this over the years, because you've had a storied history with Syngenta, running the Golden Harvest brand for some time, being on the, running the mergers and acquisitions for Syngenta before. Before you moved over to Legacy and became the CEO there. So you've been in the seed industry for a long time. This has been the primary, So I see a lot of people that really struggle in that conversation with the farmer, where the farmer sort of dominates their life. I'm at the beck and call of the farmer. Okay.
Yep.
To the point where maybe, and this is like where we have to solve for that ambiguity for that salesperson or for that sales manager, and I'm speaking specifically to those, VPs of sales and sales managers and sales leaders that are leading your teams. How do you help your people just not be so dominated, I guess is the word, by the customer? Because it's like whenever the customer needs something, whenever the customer calls, the customer is ultimately, the end thing. So, that's helping them is the end goal. But sometimes I actually sacrifice my integrity for myself in that equation. Right. And this is why we get a lot of burned out salespeople, a lot of frustrated salespeople that come through our programs, and we have to help them solve for that. So I'm just curious on your take, like how do we keep the customer, your farmer, the North Star, and be intentional, but also be intentional towards our people?
Yeah, boy, that's a handful. And it's a great question. For me, the big thing is listening, right? And this is, again, when I travel with our sales reps or managers or talk to our folks, like, okay, what is the customer really telling us, right? What are they really telling us? Because the customer isn't always right. It's okay, if the customer is saying the only thing that matters to me is buying soybeans for $32 a bag, and then we ask all the questions and we listen to what they're really telling us, and it turns out they're right, then it's okay for us to release ourselves from that conversation and say, hey, look, you and I can still hang out and see each other at church on Sunday, but I'm not your soybean salesman. It's okay. And it's going to be okay. And there'll be somebody else down the road that will see value in what we do. If all we do is just continually, like, if that sales rep comes out of that conversation and calls me up and says, hey, Colin, we got to be at $32 for soybeans, how are we going to do it? It's like, we can't solve for that equation, and I'll walk them through, hey, it costs us $14 to grow them. It costs us another $10 for traits and another this for trucking. And then I got your salary, my salary, everything else. Can't get there. We're not running a nonprofit, right? But, if I listen to that farmer and what they really want is, where they're really at is in some sort of, they're not making enough money, their profitability is low. Well, maybe then I can say, hey, I've got a non-GMO food grade soybean, takes a little more effort to grow, but pays $1.50 a bushel premium. So would that be something you're interested in, right? So again, take the time to listen, and then it's okay to release yourself, right? You can help them find their way, I did this with an employee not long ago that was looking at other opportunities. It's like, hey, if you're going to look, here's a couple questions I would ask this person that's asking you to come work for their company, right? If we're going to release ourselves from a conversation with a farmer about cheap soybeans, we'll keep beating this example to death, right? It's like, hey, maybe you want to go talk to so-and-so, right? I've heard they might be able to help. If that's all that you're after, then, perhaps they can help. And then you leave on good terms, and you release yourself from the conversation, you go on to fight another battle, right? But yeah, sales folks, guys and girls, we all hate it, right? Walking on a farm and seeing a 5,000 acre opportunity and not be able to do one thing about it and not have an offer. But it's okay. Like, there's lots of guys out there and lots of farmers out there that are willing to help, and we'll grow. And I think, just again, helping them understand I'm a big data person, right? Like, okay, how many farmers do you have in your county? How many farmers in the area? There's still lots of opportunities, still lots of people to go talk to, and we'll make it work. But you got to have a plan, and you got to be intentional with your questions and intentional with your plan.
Wonderful, wonderful answer to that. So you started to allude to it just a little bit in here. So having that conversation with an employee who maybe is struggling in those relationships, struggling to get some traction, the grass is greener on the other side. Most of the organizations that we're talking to are struggling to attract and retain good talent. So I'm just curious what you guys are doing at Legacy to solve for that.
Yeah, it's a great question, and it's not lost on me. Like Legacy Agripartners, if we're firing on all cylinders, we are hiring in AAA talent. If I'm going to use a baseball analogy, right? We're hiring in AAA talent and hopefully developing them for the major leagues. The likelihood of me hiring in major league talent, comes with the major league salary and major league expectations and all those things, right? So the best thing I can do, and we like to do, is bring in AAA talent, right? Or even AA talent, that then we can start to say, here's our vision, here's what we believe in. Again, farmers that are a star. We believe in farmer profitability is the key thing. We're talking a lot about regenerative agriculture. We don't complicate it a lot. Like the message isn't overly complicated. We're not trying to, hey, if you're logging into, Climate Field View every morning, and then this weather app and this thing, and then you'll be able to come up with a magic formula at the other side. We're try to keep it simple, try to keep our message relatable to folks. And we're also working a lot with our managers and our leaders in the organization just to have these conversations, be able to reward people on the spot for a job well done. So if I see you doing something right and you're putting effort, that we call it the ABCD award, above and beyond the call of duty, we can spot bonus you $2,000 right on the spot, right? And just right away, without my approval, without anybody's approval, just say, look, I love what you're doing here. Your next paycheck will reflect that. So again, and we're going to lose our AAA talent that we develop into major leaguers, and good luck and God bless them. We hope they have a great impact on future organizations, right? We've got people in our company right now that I know will go on to do great things at other companies, and I can't wait to see that. And I know we're purposely a stepping stool along the way to that next great thing for them, and that's fine. I think if you know your place and where you fall in the whole scheme of things, it helps a little bit. But yeah.
But what I love about this is like the intention is knowing where you're at. Right? Like I'm a small organization. I probably can't afford $150,000 a year COO.
Yeah, exactly.
But maybe I can afford a $75,000 a year, like really good assistant or team member who can solve for a lot of the things that I can't solve for. That's where I'm at. And that's where, as a small company, small business, that's where we're at. I took the kids the other night to the Durham Bulls, playing the Memphis Redbirds, here in Durham, North Carolina. And there's some pretty damn good AAA players.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's not like we're not degrading, right? That's just where they're at in their journey. They're all good enough technically to play pro ball. It's just, does the opportunity arise, and is it there? And that's the nature of the organization. So being intentional and knowing really what we're about.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think, I'd love to have like the former president of Syngenta North America on our team, but I can't. There's just no chance, right? Like it's it just doesn't. So let's think more realistically about somebody that's ready to break through talent wise into the next level of their career. How can I help get that person there? And then when they, I think it's, even if it's not with Legacy Agripartners, it's satisfying to know that they're going to make a difference somewhere in their career. And I think the final piece we did, again, for a small company, we're 60 people. We just started this in the spring, was a succession planning. So again, big companies do this extremely well, right? You know, it's like, okay, Colin, who you get hit by the beer truck in the morning, who's taking your spot, right?
Right.
But small companies, we tend to just, you know, a little more sort of, well, shoot, I didn't realize so and so was going to quit. You know, who's up next, right? And so now and I think it's important for the people in the organization to know, hey, we see you as a future leader, and you know, and it gives them one more reason to stay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean, really identifying what is the bench strength, who's on the bench, you know, where are their strengths, where else can they play on the team, are they versatile, can they do other things, can we put them in another role for a year or two to develop their skill sets in that arena, and I think, you know, the important thing is giving, you know, helping them understand the vision for what you're creating as the leader. This is what we're creating with this business. This is where we're going. And then, you know, hey, this is a part on the team. I need somebody to play this role. Can I get you to do that for a couple of years?
Exactly.
Right? Knowing that, hey, you know, this may be not the forever thing. And then, you know, I think a lot of employers hang on to their people. Like they think, you know, it's still 1970 and people do this job forever.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
Like, let's be honest. Nobody's a lifer anymore, right? Very few people. There may be some boomers that are hanging on in their last 5 years, right? That are finishing out their life term with a company, but, you know, nobody's a lifer. And I used to tell, you know, my team, I said, you know, listen, nobody's going to be here forever, but help me make this the best place for you, you know, for the next 5 years.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? And let's go do that together.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. All right. So I want to transition a little bit, Colin, and talk about, you know, what's going on in the seed industry. I think there's a lot of talk about this. It's a very exciting time, I believe, in agriculture with, and you alluded to this a bit ago with the advancing of seed technology, regenerative ag, all this stuff kind of coming together. And you've been in kind of behind the scenes, you know, being in the venture capital side of things, being able to look at that side of the industry. So I want to spend some intentional time kind of picking your brain about what are you seeing? Let's say if we look out over, I think even the next 5 to 10 years could be somewhat revolutionary. So talk to us a little bit about that. I want to come back to the end, like how do we lead businesses to be open to that? But give us a little bit of a preview. What are you seeing in the business side, the startup side, the venture capital side that's really interesting?
Yeah, well, that's a lot to unpack with that one question. Certainly, yeah. It's, you know, agriculture is really exciting. We're you know, I think we're at a precipice again of a whole bunch of change happening at once. You know, whether it's autonomous or gene editing, there continues to be, you know, the power of AI. Right, we're starting to see really good algorithms be built onto spray, you know, for nozzles on sprayers that can tell green on green differentiation between weeds and crop, you know, green on brown, which is a lot easier, you know, between weeds and bare dirt. And so, you know, things like being able to reduce the amount of pesticides we spray by half or 2/3 because of this see and spray technology from companies like Green Eye and others that are just so good at the AI, the power of AI. You know, it's overused, right? You hear it all the time on CNBC and read it in the papers, but it really is starting to transform some of these companies who had the vision a long time ago, but now just the computing power is allowing them to just do so much more. So their timeline to products in the field is advancing quickly. That excites me a lot. Gene editing is super exciting. I had I was last week, it was a weird week last week. I had a gene editing week. It felt like I went to a Center for Food Integrity meeting here in Minneapolis, and we talked about, you know, the future of gene editing in food and crops, and you know, the customer acceptance, the consumer acceptance, how that's starting to grow, and people are starting to go, hey, wait a minute, you know, you can make a healthier vegetable with the right sort of characteristics that my body needs. I'm very interested in that. So versus the traditional GMO, which allowed us to, you know, dramatically change the way farmers farmed, use less pesticides, all those things, but the consumer never saw anything in it for them out of that, right? So, and then I had a call on Friday with a lady who's just started up in venture capital, looking at, you know, she's like, still feels like there's a lot of white space to go out there to go start up a new company in the gene editing space, whether it's in vegetables or some of these smaller crops like alfalfa, like we deal in. The big guys, the Bayers, Cortevas, Syngentas, BSFs, they've got, the rice, corn, soybeans, wheat, they got that market covered. Anari, pairwise, there's lots of folks out there that are, Cebus that are working in the gene editing front on the big crops. And we're going to see, the ability to produce higher oil soybeans or higher protein soybeans, higher protein crops that will, better for feed, better for human consumption. All those things are going to be really interesting for farmers, and it's going to create a lot of choice for farmers that they haven't had before. And then, then there's this whole regenerative ag movement, right? And this is maybe the most ambiguous of the bunch. A lot of ambiguity here, but all of these companies, the Walmarts, the Nestle's, the Danones, are making pledges to Wall Street, making pledges to their stockholders, their shareholders, everyone that's around scope 3 reductions, right? And scope 3 for those companies, and for the listeners, right, if they're not sure what that is, that's what farmers and companies like Legacy are their scope 3, right? So we're further down the value chain from them. So they're trying to reduce the amount of carbon emitted and consumed at the scope 3 level. So, if we can get farmers to grow triticale, for example, which is a cover crop throughout the winter, or plant an alfalfa grass mixture that sequesters carbon, as a living root in the soil for 3 or 4 years, what is the impact of that? And so then that helps those companies meet their scope 3 emission targets. Plus, theoretically today we're still early days on this, but reward the farmer for a ton of carbon sequestered, right, for $20 or $25 a ton, so that's like $25 an acre for that farmer. Helps improve their profitability. Now, the unanswered question still for me is, okay, I'm going to go to Cub Foods here in the Twin Cities. Am I paying $2 more for my veggies that were grown more sustainably and regeneratively than not? I'm not there yet, but I want to be able to believe, I'm probably in the category of an income earner that I can afford to do that. So will my wife and I start to make choices in the way we buy foods? The research would indicate there's a group of people that are certainly ready to do that right now. So then that trickles down to the farmer, right? And so all of these things, and it's in, and as everybody knows that's involved in agriculture, right? Like I always try to explain to these startups that we get like 40 shots on goal in a lifetime with a farmer, right? 40 years of farming, 40 crops, so they're not going to jump on a technology right away because it's like, hey, there's a lot at stake. They literally bet the farm every year, right? And it's, so how do we help them understand the impact of the choice they want to make? How, again, if I come at it from the standpoint of improving profitability first and then productivity after that, I think that helps the farmer understand that, hey, I can make more money per acre, I can produce more per acre, and that's a good thing for this growing population that we have globally, and for their own sustainability as a farmer, right? Sustainability of the soil doesn't matter to a farmer if they're going broke. It's like, your house is on fire and it's like, you got somebody telling you all about how like this siding that you want to put on it is better for the environment. Like, it doesn't matter. My house is burning to the ground, right? So, if farmers going broke, it doesn't matter how much carbon's being sequestered in the soil. They don't care, right? Yeah. So we're trying to help them navigate all these decisions, be more profitable. The seed industry is such an emotional purchase for a farmer. As you well know, you've talked to these, and my buddies that sell fertilizer and stuff, I give them a hard time, like, it's such an easy life, right? Selling fertilizer, and it certainly there's lots of obstacles there as well. But for whatever reason, over the years, seed has become this emotional purchase that you have to understand the farmer's farm ground. You have to understand all the things that are going on in their operation in order to make the best recommendation. And I think this gene editing piece that's coming is going to be really exciting, but it's going to be a hard for our people to help explain what we've got a lot of work ahead of us to help explain the benefits to the farmer and how it's going to impact their operation, because it's such an emotional deal for them.
Yeah. As you're talking about it, Colin, I'm thinking about the good old Simon Sinek video, start with your why.
Yeah.
Right. Where he explains the law of, what is it? The law of diffusion of innovation.
Yeah.
Right. Where in the very beginning, you've got your 5 to 7% of people or whatever, 5 to 10% that are the early adopters. He explains that these are the first people to go out and buy an iPhone. Right. And then, the curve kind of kicks up over time. More people adopt it as they see it. Now, as it is today, 60% of people in America have an iPhone. If they have a phone, they have an iPhone. And you still have some people that are using flip phones.
Yep.
We legitimately had a client who works for a co-op in Iowa show up with a flip phone and no internet connection, so he can't come to his coaching calls. So, I mean, there are some people that will always be on the very back end of the, or never adopt, right?
Yeah.
There's a viral video going around now about a guy who has opted out, not Amish, but living the Amish lifestyle, single guy, 45 years old, living in the woods, doing his own thing, very happy. And this is going, I've been seeing this. So there's going to be always people on the back end of it that just want to not adopt. But I think, you and I have talked a lot about, this word ambiguity, solving for that. How do we help people get clear, right? How do we help drive that innovation with clarity? So, just kind of curious on your thoughts. If we had to tackle this as an industry from, 1 or 2 or 3 angles, what would you say? And let me seed this just a little bit further. I was in my interview with Kip Pendleton. We talked about, how much data is out there. That's something that he, is very passionate about. And we talked about how, for the most part, how unwilling companies are to share that data and work with each other. Okay. So I literally just did that interview with him yesterday. And the sort of our conversation was like, we could actually go faster, right? If companies were willing to collaborate a little bit better and get together on some of the science and be able to advance market, better or differently. But we were very siloed and very competitive, right? In the industry. So there's that aspect. And then I was listening to the All In podcast, and there's some major innovation, this LK99, which is
LK99, yeah,
right, which is room temperature semiconductor. Supposedly, somebody in Korea has solved for this, which would be, global complete overhaul of our grids, complete overhaul of anything that uses electricity, right?
Yeah.
Making us much more efficient and potentially decreasing the need by 2/3 or more, or 90% of the energy that it takes to make our energy. This is global, changing, life-changing stuff. And so what this person, and we don't know yet, we don't know enough as to whether this is, real. Is this substance that they have created? Is it really that level of solution? But what they did is they published their paper in a place where other scientists from all over the world it's an open source platform where people they can take what these guys did and try to recreate the experiment. And as I was listening to that, and I had just got done talking to Kip about what's going on in agribusiness, I thought, man, are we not being intentional enough as leaders to solve for the real problem? Are we so selfish that we're solving our business problems and defending our P&Ls, but not advancing the industry?
Yeah.
Right. And so I think there's a lot of fuzzy stuff out there that potentially is preventing us from being able to solve in a better way. So how do we get more customers on the front end of that adoption curve?
Yeah. Yeah.
Can we do that together?
Yeah. And just, to continue to add to the LK99 and this open source bit, I just, my sons and I just went to Oppenheimer 3 weeks ago, right? And watched this 3-hour movie about granted, open sourcing for the atomic bomb, a little, we could go down 100 rabbit holes on that whole deal. But the reality is somebody, on day one says, hey, I figured out how to split an atom and by the end of the day, everyone's like, well, this is always going to lead to weaponization of that technology. But everybody around the world's working on it. Then Oppenheimer gets his groups in 3 different sites in the US to all work independently and then kind of come together with their innovations and bring it all together at the end. And, so it was sort of an early trial run of open sourcing back then too. And so for me, like, certainly I'm amazed why there isn't more open sourcing, for lack of a better term, not to overuse the word, but in ag, I think it certainly hasn't helped that our industry has become dominated by basically 3 companies or 4 companies, right, that have 80% of the market share. It does not encourage a lot of sharing. At this meeting I was at last week at the Center of Food Integrity, Pairwise was there, and they talked about how they've actually now just started publishing what they're doing and say, here's how we do it. If you think you can do this with a different crop or a different, different application, here's how we do it. Sort of, we're making this available, our technology available to the scientists around the world, the food scientists, the breeders, and so on, to go try to use their CRISPR process in other crops. So that was really encouraging to hear. I think the other piece, again, I'm going to come back to a little bit, circle back to this point around the farmer. One of the things I find when I was in the VC group at Syngenta and on the West Coast or East Coast, right? And it's like, okay, have we talked to a farmer yet? Has anybody drove up and down I-80 and went to Kearney, Nebraska and North Platte and Algona, Iowa, and all these spots along the way to talk to farmers and listen and learn about what their problems are and how can we then solve, as opposed to sitting in the room and going, they're generating all this data, how come nobody's using it? Those guys don't know what they're doing, they're slow, they're laggards. It's like, well, get off the computer and go talk to somebody and ask them what their problems are. And then together, let's try to approach the problems to be solved in a different manner. Every year in March, there's this massive group of people that get together out in San Francisco, World Agritech Conference, right? And it's the who's who of global VC, and all the companies and the investors are there. And we would go there, right? And as the Syngenta corporate venture capital team and en masse. And the one year we brought in a guy from Basel who was our head of global digital technology, right? And so he was the guy that was trying to solve this problem. And he walks in and he's like, where are all the farmers? And it's, there's not one farmer in the entire crowd, right? There's 2,500 people standing around talking about what farmers want, but God forbid we'd actually invite a few into the room and have a discussion with us and tell us what it is that we should be solving for, right? We're just creating solutions, looking for problems, and nobody's listening to what the actual problem is. And so I think there's all sorts of answers here, but yeah, hopefully we do adopt a little more back to the old school way of thinking, right? Of, that when our great grandparents were farming, it was all, farming with others. It was all working together to solve problems, right? And, shoot, my dad farmed with a neighbor the whole time when I was growing up. He did chores for us when we were gone, vice versa. We, shared the planter, the combines, got stuff done quicker. It just made it easier and more practical for 2 guys farming, 1,200 acres each.
Yeah. That's well, and Colin, I love how you bring it back to the farmer, right? I mean, there is so much money, billions of dollars going into ag tech and going into biologicals and going into research and seed tech and all these things, and you're bringing it back to the very intentional question, that brings a lot of clarity to the conversation. That says, are we actually going and talking to farmers and finding out, what they need?
Yeah. And like, it doesn't have to be arduous. It's just like, let's just ask and make sure we're on the right track here. And if we're not, learn a little more about what might be needed. But it's so frustrating sometimes.
Yeah. Well, and I suppose you run the risk of a little like the old Henry Ford quote, right? Was,
Yeah.
if I asked people what they wanted, they would have said faster horses. So,
Yeah, exactly. True.
right.
Yeah, true.
And in that conversation with the end customer, like we get to really understand their mindset. We get to really understand if you're doing it, if you're having that conversation intentionally. If you train your people to go out and actually ask good, deep discovery questions and have real conversations about what's really going on, and we don't just talk about the surface level stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
So, okay. So I want to start to bring this in for a landing a little bit, Colin. We're definitely over our 30-minute mark, but I want to, there's so much that I think about that, the innovation and where money is flowing and what the incentives are in the space, that I wanted to just have a conversation around that with you that's a little bit different than everybody else that I talked to. So thanks for diving into that. And I know that we could continue to pick that apart for another hour, I'm sure. But regardless of the innovation, we got to go build teams. We got to build companies.
Exactly.
We have challenges, and so there undoubtedly right now there's a talent bubble in the ag industry. Have you seen this kind of thing over the course of your career at all? Is this something that is going to get better at some point, where we're not constantly, in some ways it seems like maybe salaries are a little bit inflated over what they should be? I see a lot of people making lateral moves to make more money as opposed to having to prove themselves. And so, I think there's a potential detriment there. Just curious, have you seen anything like that? And then what do we get to do to solve for this?
Yeah. It's certainly, I have not seen anything like this in my career. Now, granted, I spent 25 years at Syngenta, and you talked about there are no lifers anymore. I was damn near there, right? Like I was
right.
I was as much of a fixture. I always say I was like, the guy that kept playing Spider-Man, right? Like I was sort of typecast to be a seeds guy at Syngenta for the rest of my life, and broke out of that. But when you're at Syngenta, you maybe don't feel it as much when you're at the big company, those talent bubbles. Yeah, you lose somebody every now and then to a competitor that's really willing to pay a high price for that talent. But largely, you're sort of the top of the pyramid, right? You can do you're the apex predator. You can do sort of what you want out there. But being at Legacy and being at Legacy Agripartners and with all of our companies, there's no doubt, good people are in high demand. Average people are in high demand. It is, you'll get people that are, that, hey, I'm just going to go completely right turn out of the ag industry. We get this out west in Idaho, right? Where our folks, we got some tremendous people working out there that are just so good, but like if you've read, like half of California is moving to Idaho, it feels like. And so they're building homes, and they need project managers and construction guys, truck drivers, like jobs that are not nearly anything like what people are doing right now, but they're willing to pay so much money for people to do this work that it's all of a sudden you're having to have discussions that I've never had. It's like, okay, you could work for us and be part of our growing alfalfa business, or you could go be a project manager at a construction firm. Like I can't even compare the two in my mind because I don't understand the other opportunity, right? If it was like thinking about going to work for Bayer, I'd be able to say, well, that's a big company, and you're gonna feel these things that aren't the same. So we're still learning to deal with it. And I think the biggest thing, again, back to people and back to just helping remove some some ambiguity, create some clarity for folks on what their career at Legacy looks like, where they can go, succession planning, what do we have in mind for you, is probably some of the best things we can do. I can't, at the end of the day, if somebody's going to offer somebody that's making 60 grand as a sales rep and offer them 110 plus, like there's not much I can do, right? To hold on to that. And so then it's a matter of making sure that they know that the door is always open. If they're good talent here, the door is always open to come back. There is such a thing as a career mulligan, right? Where you can
Sure.
make a mistake and you can go join somebody, and all of a sudden, like 2 weeks later, like, whoa,
Yeah.
I made a really big mistake here, right? This was
Yeah.
nothing I thought it was. So always keep that door open. And people believe in their leaders, right? People believe they work for their bosses. They work less for their company now. So the manager training is really important. The managers knowing that they have autonomy to do what they need to do. Again, with these spot awards for jobs
Yeah.
well done, things like that are really important to us. And hopefully make our message as clear as we can to help retain talent, like that they go to bed at night knowing that Legacy Agripartners is focused on rural America, focused on farmers, focused on farmer profitability, and we're a small company that is trying to do really well in some big niche markets like alfalfa and triticale and things like that. And if we do all those things right, then I don't go to bed losing sleep if we lose a person to somebody else, because I think we know we've done all we can.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to make mistakes. Everybody does that. We're going to make a mistake here and there, and we're gonna not retain a key person that we thought we didn't need to, or whatever, or we maybe get our messaging slightly wrong, or we got to revise it. And we'll learn, and you listen, you learn. We do our exit interviews, and we take that feedback really seriously, and try to be better the next time. As my kids always tell me, be better, Dad. So
be better. Well, I think what I love about that is you're actually, you're taking ownership of it, right? As a leader. And I see a lot of leaders that don't. I run across a lot of people that are just mad, right?
Yeah.
That's someone left that, they're mad because the other company has more money or better benefits, or they can offer something that you can't. And at the end of the day, I do believe it's incumbent upon us to really, to come back to your word, right? Not be ambiguous about who we are and what we do. One of the things I like about Legacy Agripartners is, you're not mincing words about what you're about. You're focused on the forage space.
Yeah. 65% of what we sell goes through the belly of a cow.
Exactly. And
we're lying to ourselves if we think we're anything different.
Right. So don't get mad if you got to go up against somebody that's, selling, that's, a straight, just, farming for bushels, or farming for, trying to maximize that. No, we're trying to maximize our feed resources here, and that's what we're about. And I think just helping your people know, right? Hey, this is what we're about. Well, we're naturally going to attract people that maybe know a little bit more about the dairy industry, that know a little bit more about things that are related to the needs of what our, the end product is here. And people that are more passionate about that, as opposed to somebody who's just there to do a job, right? Or just there to sell something. And so, knowing what we're about. And then you brought up something early on, I wanted to come back and touch base on before we shut this thing down, which is giving your leaders, your mid-level leaders, the power to reward people effectively in the moment or in real time. This is what I think is big. Yeah.
No, I agree. And I think, one of the things, when you come from a big company like Syngenta, right, you're locked into this sort of twice a year performance review. And in January, we'll talk about, here's your 2.5% or 3.5% pay increase. And then on April 15th, that pay increase takes place. And, it's just this tried and true schedule of events that when you've been there 25 years, you just sort of you're just robotic about it. It's not good or bad. It's just how it is there. And we don't have to follow those rules, right? Like if Brett McCorkle calls me up and says, hey, so-and-so is doing a great job and I want to bump their salary 5,000 right now, this next pay period for the rest of the, till the next increase comes, he's got the power to do that. Now, we can't just, we got to make sure we're not running a nonprofit here, but at the same time, if it's the right thing to do, the right person, and we've all agreed this is the right talent and we want to retain them and reward them for a job well done, you don't have to wait till April to do this. Like we can do it in the middle of February or the middle of October, right? It doesn't matter, just whenever you. So I think we're getting better at those things, and then the reward system. Just, I like telling this story because it's something that is, so our research farm for a couple of years in Wapaka was a good place. We were getting a lot done there, but it was starting to get a little ragged on the edges, right? The weeds are coming in a little bit. The alleyways weren't being kept as nicely and things like that. And, we hired a new agronomy director for Wisconsin, and he runs the research farm for us as well. And Mike does a hell of a job cleaning this thing up, right? And getting it looking so like you would take anybody there without any qualms at all, right? Like you could walk, the Secretary of Ag, Vilsack, right through that site, and you'd feel so proud of everything out there, right? And so we wanted to reward them for it, right? Like we're out there in July last year and you're walking through, it's like, holy crap, this is so much different and better than it was a year ago. Like, next paycheck, let's give you your reward, right? And it's, this is, and I think that helps that employee realize like the work isn't in vain. People notice it. Thank you cards are great too, but every now and then, like a monetary gift is a nice thing to do, right? So
and it's
absolutely the right thing to do.
Well, I don't want to crack this can too far open, and because this could lead us into a whole nother hour-long conversation. But as you look at the next generation, and really it's not even next, it's the current, and then the one coming after them, you're 35 and unders for the most part in the workplace have grown up in a world where there is immediate gratification and immediate reward and immediate praise. And, moms and dads have been at just about every baseball game and choir concert and hockey game and football game and golf meet and whatever, dance recital or whatever that you've been involved with, every livestock show, every, FFA convention, have been there supporting their children. And there's been immediate reward and a Facebook post about how good their kid is doing.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. And so in a world, we have to be intentional as leaders going forward to be able to solve for recognition. Yes. And, from a monetary perspective, also from just a pure recognition standpoint, you may not like it, but this is the reality of the world you're going into. These people have had the connection and the likes and the views and the attention their entire life. And so now as the employer, you get to figure out how to solve for this. And I want to dive deeper whether with you, Colin, with others over time about that. That's a big challenge that we get to solve for. But
it's exciting. I love the new generation of workers. You got to embrace it. We were young one time too, right? And I'm sure my boss's boss looked at me and like, what the hell is Steen doing today? Like,
well, every generation is. Every generation is worse than the one before, according to the one before, right?
Exactly.
Yet here we are. We're still going. We're still living. We're still working. And yeah. Okay. Couple of quick things. Really quick speed round, Colin. What book should people be listening to or reading right now? Listening in their Audible or sitting down and reading?
The one I've liked, I quoted this one a few times, people around me. I've always liked this book called Good Business by Bill Novelli. It basically gives you as the reader sort of permission to say, hey, it's okay to make money while doing the right thing, right? So I talk about this with regards to regenerative ag to our employees. Like, it's okay for us to talk about regenerative ag and make some money doing it. Like, it's not, we don't have to turn into the Sierra Fund here. We can make some money while helping farmers do the right thing. So Good Business is a good book that way. He did a lot of work on childhood anti-smoking campaigns and AARP and things like that, and made a lot of money doing it, working for these ad agencies. So
good. How do you keep your energy up?
Great question. I get up every morning pretty early to work out. I either go to Orange Theory Fitness or ride my bike or ride the Peloton. So I try to work out 6 or 7 days a week, and most of it before 7 a.m. Just I find that start to the day is really, really important. And I work really hard at trying to get enough sleep. So when you get up early, then you got to go to bed early. And so it's that's getting my sleep, getting my workouts in, and then obviously I get a lot of energy just from my being around my family after, this work-life balance piece gives you energy as well, right? So if I can spend time with my wife and my kids and have a nice dinner together, that's awesome. Get a lot of energy from that.
Yeah. And I know you're someone who does a great job of, blocking time and making sure that you're making time for that. So last question is any tips for that maximum productivity? How do you keep that balance?
Yeah. Listening is the main thing. Like you and I have talked, we all know it, right? So you got to just listen to that voice in your back of your head that's telling you like, man, things are fraying a little bit here, whether at work or at home. And I find like if I can keep the balance at home in good shape, then it gives me the opportunity to say, hey, I got to work all weekend. Like I've got a big presentation to the board on Tuesday. I got to spend 6 hours Saturday and 6 hours Sunday working on this. I don't feel guilty about that because I've put enough coins in the bank earlier in the week or the month or wherever to be important. But I find I really got to pay attention to that voice in the back of my head that says, hey, Colin, like things are fraying a little bit every time you and your wife are talking right now. And so maybe, just maybe you guys should go for dinner tonight without the kids, and it's, if I can do that then, as opposed to, the argument over like how I just don't understand at home makes, if I can get it before we get to that point, right, to the boiling point when things have completely frayed, which we all have been there and will be there again in our lives. But I'm trying really hard to listen to the voices that tell me that to be a little more intentional at home.
Very good. Awesome. Well, Colin, this has been a great interview and such a wealth of knowledge and information and wisdom shared. So thanks for being on today.
Thanks, Mark. Appreciate it. As always, good talking to you.
You got it.